Hello, Wayne Sloan, business advisor. Agency name is Wayne Sloan Insurance Agency. Welcome. I am so happy to have Kelly Dehan, the former CEO of Bessle Transfer, a major trucking company here in town here. Okay. Kelly operated the company for over 30 years, and for part of that time she was the CEO. I'm going to allow Kelly to tell more about herself and whatever introduction she would like.
Thank you, Wayne.
All
It's a
right.
pleasure to be here. Yeah, I, as a lot of people do, I started out in hospital administration. I went to school in Boston for a couple of years, at Boston U, and then came back to Cincinnati. And my father was in this business, and somehow kind of lured me in, and so. But I did start, I was in it for 32 years, and the last 10 years, my father had passed, and my brother and I were in the business, and so we continued to run it and bought out some, fellow owners, and it went well. And then we had a company, look to want to talk with us about buying us, which he did at the end of 2013. And so I stayed on through 14 to help with the transition. So I'm here today with Wayne to maybe talk about a couple little basic, things about trucking. As we know, there's 5 modes of transportation. You've got air, and you've got water, you've got rail, and then you've got pipe. Believe it or not, that's a pipeline for the oil and such, water. In trucking, though, I will say, is about 76% of all transportation is by way of trucking. And there's an old adage, if you got it, a truck brought it. And so somewhere along the line, the truck was involved. And you might know there's 3.5 million truck drivers here in our country. That's a lot of drivers. Wow. 2 million of which are heavy haulers. And maybe 300,000 to 500,000 of those are long haul heavy haulers. So there's quite a bit of training that goes in. Just to give you an example, there's 5% of our population is in transportation in some form. You have different, classes with the CDLs, A and B, some are, maybe box trucks or, just delivery sort of, and then you have the ones that you need to have a little more training and such. When it comes to trucking, Wayne, there's there's a couple ways you can go, because I think with the shortage here in the last couple of years, people have talked more about transportation, particularly trucking. They think, wow, there's opportunity there, and there is. But normally you go one of 2 ways. One is you're a broker, and maybe a lot of you here, certainly in our town, know of our town of Cincinnati, know of TQL, Total Quality Logistics, right. And they're what you would call a broker, and so by that. We mean that you pretty much hook up the trucking company with the shipper, and you're sort of the middle person putting them together. And so when you do that, you have to have a good system. You have to have some insurance, non-contingent liability, and you have to have a very good, accurate system. It's a lot of responsibility and a lot of requirements. Now, if you decide, oh gosh, I want to be a trucking company, that's a whole nother ballgame, and there's a whole lot more to it. And so when and if you decide that, you kind of think about, okay, who do I need? Who can I get to drive for me as a business owner? So you might own your own equipment, own or lease it, and then you get drivers that are either employed by you.
Can I ask you a question here? What
Certainly.
Is I have heard that, is it better to lease or to own the trucks?
Lease or own, that's $1 million question, Wayne. A lot of people will say lease. I personally would say own, but that's talk with your banker, your finance people. The lease, you'll need less up front, so if you're just getting started, that could be a good thing. But there's some ins and outs to that, but that's a deep discussion. It's kind of like, do you like to lease or own your car? Okay. I like to own, just simply because I want to do if I have it repaired where I want to have it repaired, do things the way I want to do it, So it's just a a preference. I would say by and large, leasing's more popular though. But eyes wide open about everything in that lease. That's for sure.
For the trucking industry, what is their income or their economic value in the U.S.? How much do they bring to the bottom line?
In fact, if you don't mind, Wayne, I think I have this. So now I'm going back a couple of years because, lately, back a couple of years ago, there were 1.8 million carriers out there. And you think, oh my gosh, really? Well, most of them over 90% have 6 or fewer trucks. Okay, so there's a lot of onesies and twosies, right?
Sure.
And when you talk in terms of freight carried, a couple of years ago, there was about 305 billion miles carrying 12 billion tons of freight, and shipping about 73% of our total tonnage domestically. Internationally, about 68% from U.S. and Canada, and 83% between here and Mexico.
Trucking's an important part.
It certainly is. And like I was saying before, Wayne, you can have a driver, like buy the truck, lease the truck, then you get a driver. Mm-hmm. Or you can use what we call owner-operators. They're also called independent contractors. And they're in fact, we pretty much eventually exclusively used owner-operators. We did have a company division and then had owner-operators. But I want to mention about a half a dozen things here that if you're thinking about trucking, company to start, these are things you have to get. I'm going to rattle them off real quick.
ABCs.
It might be D, E, F, G too.
Okay.
So you have to have a U.S. DOT number, and that's a U.S. Department of Transportation number, and the DOT will give that to you. You have to have your operating authority. You have to say, hey, am I a broker? Am I a carrier? And so know who you are, and they'll give you an MC, a motor carrier number, in addition to your DOT number. Then you have heavy vehicle use tax. That used to be $550 a year, and sorry, a little dated here, I've been out of it a couple of years, but that's a once a year thing. There's a thing called IRP, which is International Registration Plan. That's your plate. Okay. And here again, I should have looked this up. At the time, it was about $1,800 a year. That's just to get your plate, so you're apportioned to go through, all the states you want to go through. Then there's an International Fuel Tax Agreement. It's called IFTA. And with IFTA, that means that you fill out one tax return quarterly. Here's all your fuel tickets that you bought, and how many miles did I travel in each, divided by how many miles I got a gallon, and then basically you get credit for your receipts, but there's a lot of states that have surcharges. Like they'll charge more on the tax return than what you paid at the pump. Sure. So that's just a quarterly thing that's very important. And then the last two things is it's a Boc3 filing, and that is if someone needs to get a hold of you, as a business owner, they need to have somewhere that they can send that official documentation so they can forward that to you. And sometimes, I hate to say, that can have to do with lawsuits and such. Then finally, the FMCSA, that's a big deal. That's the safety part. Now, and don't let me freak you out with all these other things. Those are kind of one-time things, except for your quarterly and annual things you have to do.
Those things that get set up.
They do. It's just things that get set up. But the big thing with trucking is, as you can imagine, is safety. Because Wayne, a truck driver is 10 times more likely to get killed on the road than a regular office person or whoever, just regular jobs here in the United States.
You're saying that a truck driver is
a
more
truck
likely?
driver is.
Those that he hit were more.
Well, there
likely.
is that. And so with that, Wayne, I would suggest, even if you're getting into trucking or you're not, respect the truckers. They can haul up to 80,000 pounds with that tractor and trailer, and they're registered for that. And in some states, you can even buy permits to go above the 80,000. So just, and they can't just stop like we stop, right, in a car. So, but you do have the safety element of it. There's a thing called CSA, and that's part of the FMCSA, and that has some regulations where, you have to have a drug testing program. You have to have your driver's license, a CDL. You have to have a qualification card that has to do with the physical that you get every 2 years. So, and then you have to have your equipment inspected annually. And so this isn't a small thing. It takes a lot to decide, hey, this is what I want to do.
Okay. What about those drivers who have had accidents in their past? Can they become a truck driver?
That's a maybe. That's a maybe. It depends on the accident, and certainly, for the most part, yes, because it's not always the trucker that's at fault, right? But it depends. But it's not like, I think UPS. You have one. I've heard this. I don't know that 100%, but one and done. But that's typically, we're in such a demand for truckers that yes, you can have an accident and still drive.
What about part of, there is a shortage, a serious shortage of drivers right now. Serious. I recall seeing on TV, where you saw the freight not being picked up, et cetera.
Sure.
Just
Yeah.
a problem with trucking. What is the training like for a driver?
Well, interesting.
To get your CDLs?
Just like anything, when there's a shortage, you got to figure out how we're going to handle this. So there's a lot of trucking companies out there that have implemented the driver training program, which, where they say necessity is the mother of invention, right? So even if you weren't into that before, you might consider it. And so the line of business I was in was like flatbed, mainly steel and machinery.
Okay.
So we couldn't just hire someone off the street particularly. You had to have a little training and such, but to chain and tarp the loads.
Sure.
But if you wanted to get into trucking, even though, let's say, flatbed may pay more, and certainly hazardous material pays even more than that. But the base, van type loads, I'd say, start there and get with a truck driver training program. Because they really, they're, in some states they're even trying to get 18-year-olds, not just 21-year-olds to drive. So, and we do have a lot of other countries. Believe it or not, trucking is one of the more egalitarian industries that 40% are minority.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. What about the, I have my truck, I have my routes, etc. What about the actual managing, the actual operation?
There you go. Thank you. That's a darn good question. Because once you line all that up, then you have to make sure, hey, what customers do I want to deal with? Who do I want to haul? What kind of lanes can I do effectively with these drivers? And I'm going to really got to emphasize this. How's their credit? So Dun & Bradstreet is a friend. We had a subscription, and it was very important to us because you could get all the freight in the world, and you might get a call and say, hey, I got like 400 loads for you to take. Well, do your little credit check, because I'm telling you, if they, to me, if they take longer than 45 days to pay, it truly isn't worth it. And we were really quite strict about that.
Yeah,
so
because that can put a small guy out of business.
Yes, absolutely. But just like, in addition to that, I will say, just like anything you build, whether it's trucking, insurance, you've got to, the golden rule, it's there for a reason. Be good to people. If you're going to say you'll do things, do whatever you can. If you mess up, okay, deal with it right away. Don't kick the can down the road. Communication takes care of a lot of things. So be fair, do what you say, and try and hire people that have that philosophy too, because they're your face on the place too, right? And because every business has a personality, right? So if they grow to like you and like your company and like who dealing with anybody in your company, it makes a big difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had mentioned insurance. What type of insurance is actually needed in this
Insurance?
business? Because again, I think of all the risk.
Yeah, big time.
Big trucks.
You should know. You're in that business. I was in it too, on the other end.
So help me understand.
Yes. Okay. So, you have, like they call, the biggie is what they call auto liability, AL. And that is the liability. If something should happen, you're going down the road, somebody hits you, you hit them. That's a liability factor. Then you have the cargo that you're insuring, which is quite a bit less typically than the liability, because there's a finite number to that cargo.
Okay. What amounts of liability should it?
Okay, now if you're a broker, that used to only needed, I say only, used to be like 750,000, but I think it's $1 million contingent liability for broker. Now, for a carrier, it has to be $1 million, okay, $1 million, and then you might get more. We had 3, I think, 2x of one, they call it, 2 million in excess of that one primary liability. And then the cargo, and depending on what you're hauling, make sure you know the value of what you're hauling. Some contracts your customers will have you sign will require, here's your 100,000, typically is a good number. Okay. And then you have physical damage, or also known as collision, where you insure the tractor and trailer. And then you have bobtail, which is a non-trucking liability.
Okay.
So
what is bobtail again?
It's non-trucking liability. And so what that means is you're going down, let's say you dropped your load, you're going home, or you're an owner-operator and you take your truck to the grocery store just because your car is out of gas. So it's a non-trucking thing of what you're, and there's very few claims with that. It typically runs, maybe around $40 a month.
Okay. Very good.
So there's a lot of insurance, but you've got to have it. So don't even think about not having it. And if you have a trucking company, every now and then you might get some loads that you can't move, so you may broker them out if you have your broker authority too. So it's very important, if that's the case, as well as if you are a broker, that you're using carriers, that you have the insurance certificate and it's up to date, because God forbid something happens, and that's big.
Yeah.
So,
I keep thinking about the whole trucking business. When I think about the trucking industry, I think about a male-dominated business.
You could say that.
Management, all the drivers are males, mechanics, etc. But you have been successful as a woman CEO. Okay? Can you tell me how did you survive in this business?
Well, that's a good question, Wayne. It is. There are more women drivers now, and there are more women in management than in my tenure. I started in the industry in the early 80s, so it's a far cry different than now. There's inappropriate things that are said, and I try to make it have humor, because there was one person I remember was really pretty, let's say, misogynistic. So Saturday Night Live used to have this thing, and they gave people this shoe noogie. They'd take the shoe off and go like this with on their. So these other people, the men around, it got to be half a joke. I'd take my high heel off and go that on his head, just as a joke. Sure. But it wasn't always a joke, Wayne. I mean, there's you have to. I don't know. I think we've talked about this before. It's not. You can't control what other people do or say, only how you respond to it. So if you can just take a pause and, try and keep your head, it works. And like I know every day, you drive home and you think about the 2 things that didn't go your way and the 98, not the 98 that did. So just remember, the next day, it's like there's an old thing, this thing called Etch-a-Sketch. You just shake it and start over. And things are always better the next day. I don't care what business you're in. Right. And you just have to keep on doing it and have faith in yourself and work hard. You got to be about it, study up, know your stuff, work hard, and it will come.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great, Kelly.
Yeah.
It's been great information. I know you're enjoying your retirement right now.
I am. I'm doing a lot of community work, though. Staying busy.
Yeah.
That's good.
I had met Kelly. We're both SCORE members, and so we both enjoy talking about business and also helping business owners grow. So it was just a very good match for us here.
It sure is.
Yeah.
You're top drawer, Wayne.
Well,
good to be with
Kelly.
you.
Okay,
Yes.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you. Once again, this is Wayne Sloan. My phone number, my contact information is Wayne Sloan. Phone number is 513-353-8555. Email address is waynesloania@gmail.com.
And my contact information, Wayne, is Kelly, Kelly, .Dehan, Dehan, @scorevolunteer.org, should you like to email me.
Once again, thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you, Wayne.
Appreciate it.